Okay, so today I wanted to do a little segment on gouache. People ask a lot about gouache. Gouache, it rhymes with squash, but it is actually spelled, I don't know if you can see that right there, Gouache. Gouache is how it's spelled, and it is an opaque-like paint that you use kind of like watercolor. So this is an example of a gouache painting that I've done, and it is opaque. Watercolor is translucent, meaning you can see through it, whereas gouache, it's more, you can't see through it unless you water it down a lot. And the reason why is because gouache is different from watercolor in that it uses bigger pigment particles. So for instance, we can see right here where I kind of dropped some more water into this so you can kind of see the pigments as they spread out. Still acts a little bit like watercolor, but not as thick as, say, like acrylic paint. And so you can kind of see the pigment particles. Another reason why it's more opaque is because watercolors use binder to like hold those pigments together, and the binder to pigment ratio in gouache is higher. So you have like 3 times more pigment in there to the binder that you would have in a watercolor. And finally, it's got additives like chalk, especially for your lighter gouache painting, or barite for like your darker colors. You're gonna have barite in there to help make those darker colors nice and opaque for you. So that is just a starting point for what gouache is. I do use pretty much exclusively 2 different brands of gouache. The first one is Holbein Artist Gouache I use. This is my big old giant white tube. I keep big giant tubes of white and black because those are going to be the ones that I use to lighten or darken my colors. And then the other brand I use is Da Vinci, and I really love their bright watercolors, and I also love their gouache. So I use Da Vinci and Holbein. I do use different brushes. You know, normally with watercolor, silver black velvet are my go-tos. I love my silvers. But for gouache, I have found that I can pretty much use any standard nylon brush. I tend to like angles because then you can get a lot of spreading action, but you can also get the fine points as well. But if I have to pick brushes that I really enjoy using in gouache, I will say Holbein Gold is the gold standard, I should say. Like, this is a Holbein Gold 7 round, and I like that it comes to a nice thin point, but it still carries a lot of paint on there. So I have those, but I also have just my regular cheap nylon brushes I use for spreading stuff too. I've got my gouache right here, and yes, this is a laminated piece of paper. Instead of using a fancy palette, I know a lot of people do that, I use this because I like to see how the colors are going to transform on the paper. I also like to mix a lot of my colors when it comes to gouache, and you'll actually see I've got 2 drops up here of my white and my yellows. One is going to be to keep the yellow and white pure. The other one is going to be for mixing. I've got my blue, and I've got a dark green, and I've got a brown right here. And then I've got my sketch right over here of some mushrooms. We're going to do a mushroom painting. And the sketch itself is not going to be super helpful because once you start painting over it, of course, it is going to be opaque, so we're not going to be able to see the sketch. But it is helpful when I start putting in background, so I know, like, hey, let's do blue up here, brown down here, a little bit of green right here in the middle. So it helps kind of keep me focused on those areas. So here we go. We're going to get started. Hold on tight. As I was painting along, I thought of a couple more things that I probably need to add in case you're interested. So because of the nature of the additives that are in there, the barite and the chalk and things like that, it does dry. Gouache does dry a little bit faster than watercolor. I'm in the super humid south. I don't know if you can hear the cicadas outside my window, but they are going nutso. So super humid south, so usually in watercolor, it actually takes my watercolors a while to dry. So it's not normally so much of an issue, but with my gouache, because of the chalk and stuff, it tends to dry out very, very fast. So I actually have a little spray bottle here that I just keep here in my studio, and every now and again I just mist my entire palette right here with water just to keep the paints activated and keep them going. You can use gouache once it has been dried, but it's kind of like you know, when you go to a restaurant and you get food and it's like really, really good, and then you take home leftovers the next day, they're still good and they're yummy, but maybe they aren't quite the same as like when you got them fresh there in the restaurant. And so gouache is kind of the same way. It's really great and awesome out of the bottle, but the next day, once it's been dried, maybe not so awesome. I will say that does not keep me from not keeping, like this is a palette I used on another painting. I do still keep that because I'll reactivate it and then add more pigment to it, because I want to keep the colors if I like pause from a painting and then want to come back and work on it again later. So I will keep old palettes and just let them be dry and crusty for a while. Or if you just need to rinse off your palette when it's dry like that, you can just take it to the sink and, you know, get it wet and reactivate the colors and then just wipe it down with a paper towel. What I'm doing right now is I'm layering in different colors of grass here on the paper, and I did want to talk a little bit about paper. So what I'm using right now is actually, it's Fabriano is the brand. Oh, I taped it down so I don't know that you can see it, but it's Fabriano, and it is a 5x7 block that I'm using. It's taped down so that it will actually fit in the frame. I have a frame that I'm going to be using for this particular painting, and so it's taped down so that it will fit in the frame when it's done. So I tape down my watercolors and I tape down my gouache, and I know a lot of other artists do that too. I have never seen it done in another medium. So like my acrylic people, my charcoal people, my colored pencil people, like, do y'all tape your paintings down too? I don't know. I've only ever seen it done in watercolor, but I also have only ever extensively studied watercolor. So other mediums may do it as well, but that's why if you ever see there's tape down here, I do tape it down. This is just regular painter's tape that is taped down right there, because a lot of people have problems, they said, when they like remove the tape of it tearing the paper. I've never actually experienced that. I usually either just hit it with my heat gun for a little bit, my heat tool, and that loosens the adhesive so I can remove it. Or I find a lot of times if I'm using cotton paper that I just don't have an issue with it. If I'm using really good quality cotton paper, then it's not a big deal. I can just like go ahead and rip it off and life will be good. So use good quality high cotton paper, 100% cotton, which is what I'm using right now. The Fabriano cotton on here on a block. Also, just FYI, blocks are different from regular watercolor paper. Regular watercolor paper you usually have to like tape down to a board or something like that so you can paint on it. But blocks are a block of paper all glued together except for one little side. I believe the side's up here. When I take the tape off, I just take a knife and just like scrape it around and that paper will pop off. But it's nice because it keeps it all in one place for me as I am painting. So I just wanted to talk about paper, keeping your paints wet, and why we tape things down. Stuff like that. Okay, we're gonna keep going. Okay, so something else I want to tell you about gouache. You know the saying, like, you have to know the rules before you can break the rules? Well, one of the rules with gouache is that you have to watch your moisture levels when you are applying layers on top of other layers, like you can see right here, because if you have too much moisture in your pigment in the paint that you're laying down, it's going to reactivate the paint layers that are underneath that you've already painted. So you can see I'm putting down a fairly thick amount of paint when I'm putting down these trees in front. Like you can see like that green stripe right there, that just was paint being activated or reactivated, I guess. So I'm gonna put some more dark paint on top of that, some thicker dark paint. But I'm doing trees right now. And I have some trees that in the background, I want to look a little bit faded, like they're kind of in the mist. And so I am going to use that action that I know that the gouache will be reactivated, but I'm going to use it for good this time. So I'm going to put down, this is a tree. The paint that I'm using is a little wetter than the other one I was using just then. And you can see it's reactivating the pigment underneath it. And then I'm swiping my brush up and down to make sure that that pigment is nice and activated. Maybe I'll even put in some branches here. So it's like going behind the tree. And we'll put in some more over here. Just to make it like a little bit fuller in the forest there. But because I knew that rule about the water ratio to paint reactivating the gouache underneath, I was able to use that to kind of create an effect that makes the painting seem a little bit more deep. So that is one of the rules that you need to know about gouache and needs to know when you can break it.